Ms. Arias, you are still under oath. Do you understand?
Yes.
Mr. Nermy, you may continue with redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Jody.
Good morning.
Judge. Ms. Arias, last week when you spoke with counsel for the state, you were shown Exhibit 456. Showing that to you now. Do you remember seeing that?
Yes.
Journal entry? Okay. To your recollection, was that the only journal entry you made on January 24th, 2008?
No, it was not.
Hand you what's been marked as Exhibit 511. Could you please read that over for us?
Okay.
Okay. Drawing your attention back to Exhibit 456, it appears that you place your initials and then there is a line underneath the paragraph. Is that what you would do to end a particular entry?
Usually, yes.
Okay. You say usually the Exhibit 511 I just showed you, the writings that follow on January 24th, was that a separate entry?
Yes.
Okay. But was it a continuation of the thoughts and ideas that you were dealing with on January 24th of 2008?
Yes.
And in that regard, do the highlighted portions hold any significance as it relates to your thoughts about what you may have seen days prior?
Yes.
And you authored this on January 24th, 2008, all these entries, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to move to admit Exhibit 511.
Objection, lack of foundation as to the timing, and if I may more dire, as to the timing of these entries.
Your Honor, we would object. May we approach?
Well, I'll give you an opportunity to follow up on that issue with regard to timing, and then you may approach.
Ma'am, with regard to this entry here, or exhibit number 511, there is an indication, you said that the Thursday entry of January 24th of 2008, that's the end of that entry, correct?
Yes.
There is no date for the next entry, is there?
No.
And then, however, at the very top, we have another entry that says Thursday, 1/24/2008, right?
Yes.
And with regard to this particular entry, that's Thursday, 1/24/2008, how much time elapsed between the first entry was made and the second entry was made?
It was probably just enough time for me to listen to that audiobook and record that excerpt from the audiobook.
So you were listening to something, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
With regard to this second entry of January 24th of 2008, is that the complete second entry? Or is there more missing, since I don't see your initials on this one?
I believe it's the complete entry.
You believe what?
It's the complete entry.
Why don't we have you take a look at it just to make
Okay.
sure? Okay. This is exhibit number 242.002. Take a look at it.
Yes.
All right. So how much time are we talking about between the first Thursday, January 24th, 2008 entry and the second Thursday, January 24th, 2008 entry?
It would have been a matter of hours, but I don't know exactly how many hours.
All right. I don't have any objection.
Okay, Jodi, let me draw your attention. Now, looking at, before we go into Exhibit 511, looking at Exhibit 456, the portion previously admitted of the January 24th, 2008 minute entry, it says there's been nothing noteworthy to report. You see that?
Yes.
And you were questioned last week because you had told us that on the 21st or 22nd of January 2008 is when you saw Mr. Alexander masturbating to an image of a child. Remember that?
Yes, the 21st.
Okay. And before we get into the entry, you had said, you were asked several times, well, why would you say nothing's noteworthy to report? And you said that wouldn't be the type of thing I would write in my journal. Can you explain that to us now?
Well, to me, as far as noteworthy things you would want to note, and that's exactly the opposite of something I would want to note. I wouldn't want to remember that. I wouldn't want it recorded in my journal as far as record keeping goes. And also it's a highly negative event, and it was a negative experience for me, and it's not something that I wished to remember.
Okay. And now, before we move past discussion of this event, one of the things you were asked about is what time of day it was that you saw Mr. Alexander masturbating to this image. Do you recall being asked that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you saw that event, you witnessed what you described for us, did you think to yourself, I better check my watch, I might need to testify about this 5 years later?
No.
It was a startling event, was it not?
Yeah, it was very shocking.
Drawing your attention back to Exhibit 511. And specifically, try to make it visible for you there. I guess we can't get it all in. You see there that you're speaking about Travis.
Yes.
2 or 3 days later, after this event. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned that you love him. Love him.
Yes.
Is that an accurate of your feelings for him at that point in time?
Yes, it was.
You say that you're saying that he displays a massive amount of unconditional love for you?
Yes.
And you felt that way at the time?
I did.
You say in this entry, I'm almost haunted by it. What does that mean?
It means the light and the dark, because that was following, a few days following a really dark, couple of dark events, and he makes up for it in really amazing ways, and that part just stays with me, and it's hard to, I couldn't get that out of my mind or my heart, just the way, how tender he is and how much more he displays his love when he goes out of his way to make up for whatever he did.
So when you say you're haunted by it, are you saying you're haunted by what you saw on the 21st or 22nd, or are you haunted by his love? I'm a little confused.
More,
There's not a foundation as to which day. On the 22nd, she claims he hit her. On the 21st, she claims something else.
Sustained.
At this time period, you say you're haunted by it. What is it?
it's more the conflicting desire that I had I wanted to stay with him, but I also knew that would be a really bad idea. So it was more just like I'm haunted by the love that he expresses toward me that keeps me, well, I stayed with him out of my own free will, but it felt like it kept me hooked. Even though he wasn't like forcing me to stay with him or anything, I felt like I wanted to continue being with him when he acted that way, but he wasn't always that way.
You mentioned in the next sentence, well, why don't you read the next sentence for us? It begins with but.
But it still remains that I cannot marry him. I can't quite put my finger on it, but something is just off with that boy. We've all got head problems, that's for sure, but
Okay.
there are.
Well, we went 2 sentences here, so let's back
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry.
To the first sentence. You say this is in January 4th of 2008, you've come to the conclusion that you could not marry Travis. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Was the subject of marriage previous to January 24th, was that something that you and Travis were discussing?
Yes, we've discussed it prior to that date.
And had he ever proposed to you?
Yeah, he did over the phone once.
Did you receive that proposal as being serious or just a joke?
There were times when he said it jokingly, but that one over the phone, I believed he was serious.
And did that one over the phone, did that occur before this journal entry on the 24th? If you recall.
Yes, that was the day we broke up.
Okay. Now you said, reading on in that sentence, you can't quite put your finger on it, but something is off with that boy. That boy being Travis, right?
Yes.
Okay. What did you mean by that when you wrote that in your journal?
Well, that's kind of my indirect way of referring to his issues that were, in my mind, something I couldn't look past and accept.
Okay. Looking at that last sentence again that begins with "but," there are certain things that will never sit right with, is that me?
Yes.
And are we referring to that same incident in January? Things
Yes.
that didn't sit right with you?
Yes, both incidents.
The next sentence there, he talks, could you read that for us, beginning with "for example"?
For example, he always makes that ridiculous joke. Families can be forever. Why do you want to spend so much time with them now?
And you say that you want a family man who takes family seriously. Are you referring back to the idea of reasons why you wouldn't marry Travis in those sentences? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, just
Restate your question, it's the same.
What are we referencing in those two sentences?
well, directly I'm referencing a joke that he used to make, and I left out together. It should be families can be together forever. That's how the saying goes in the church. And but he would add that second part to the sentence. And he made that joke several times right before this date because I went to see my family in Wairika for Christmas. So it just, even though he joked, it kind of reminded me that he wasn't really a family kind of guy, I didn't think. And especially after the previous few days, I worried about what, I guess it just sort of eliminated in my mind any possibility of having children with him because I would be worried, about my children.
Now you're still in the next sentence there. Could you read that? But he has told me.
But he has told me time and again that if he could marry me, it would mean he won the wife lottery.
So when we're talking about this entire paragraph and what we saw before, the stream of consciousness seems to be the issue of marriage. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, yes.
And so this comment about winning the wife lottery with you, is that something Travis made once or made many times?
He told me that on several occasions.
And you found that, from what we see here, it seems like you found that to be sweet.
I took it as a very high compliment.
And you say here that you want to be married on January 24th of 2007. Was that, for lack of a better way of putting it, was that a goal in your life?
At that time, that was a goal in my life.
There's a sentence there, says, "I certainly." Did you see that? Begins with "I certainly."
I'm looking for, oh yeah.
Could you read that sentence for us?
I certainly wasn't thrilled, no. I was devastated when I discovered that he wasn't being faithful to me.
In that sentence, you say faithful. What are we talking about by faithful?
Just being monogamous within our relationship.
So on January 24th of 2007, you knew that he wasn't monogamous within your relationship, correct?
Yes, because the year before is when I had discovered that.
But you kept going with the friendship, correct?
Yeah, the friendship.
And you
I
went
guess.
along with the sexual activities as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is something you had a long-standing knowledge of before June 4th of 2008, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Drawing your attention to what appears to be the final highlighted page. Let's read that over and tell us, what is that a reference to?
I was comparing my two previous experiences of being cheated on with my experience of being cheated on with Travis and how they were different.
And you talk about ripping out the last few pages, but you refrained from doing that. I just want to make sure, ripping out the last few pages, is that a metaphor, or are we actually talking about ripping pages out of the journal?
Kind of both. I was referring to literally doing it, but by doing that, it would kind of symbolize wanting to erase that day or that whatever, that kind of thing, whatever I'd written about, but I didn't.
That day referring to what you just wrote on the 24th?
No, more referring to the negative things I had just written about, but those are indirectly referring to those 2 days prior, the 21st and 22nd.
Okay. So rather than making notes about time and location, your goal was to try to forget what you had seen.
Objection made.
Sustained.
Now, Ms. Arias, I want to draw your attention to Exhibit 471. This was a entry from your journal on March 2nd. Do you remember seeing that?
Yes.
Now showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 512 and also handing you Exhibit 471. You take a look at both of these and discern for us whether Exhibit 471 is the entirety of your journal entries from March 2nd, 2008.
It looks like the entirety of that entry, but there's another one on the same day.
In which exhibit contains that entry in the same day?
512.
Okay. And as it relates to 512, that entry that is contained in 511 that is not in 470, is that right?
Or 71.
471. Is that a continuation of the thoughts you were having on March 2nd of 2008?
Yes, it's along the same theme.
Okay. And you mentioned separate entries. Like with the last entry, was there a period of time which you stopped your writing?
There might have been, if that's why I started to date it again, but not much because it was all on the same day.
Okay. So you don't recall how long it was between these two journal entries?
Since it's a Sunday, it likely would have been 3 hours because usually I journaled before church and after, and sometimes during.
Okay. And you just told us you were dealing with some of those same issues that you were dealing with earlier in your journal on 3.2. Referencing the highlighted portion, does that illustrate the issues you were going through, not previously noted on 3/2/2008?
Yes.
I move to admit Exhibit 512.
No objection.
512 is admitted.
And before we talk further about the entry on Sunday, March 2nd, 2008, do you remember what was going on that day?
More the day before that, on Saturday, but yeah, Sunday.
Okay, well, what was going on that Saturday before that?
That's the day we were going to drive to the tax seminar in Tempe, and we ended up not going because of the fight that we got into.
Okay. Now, looking at the portion of your journal entries that we didn't see in the previous exhibit 471, we see March 2nd, 2008, and now as you said earlier, that's the day you wrote that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you could be so kind as to read the first sentence of the highlighted portion.
I wish I could turn back the clock and make some different decisions.
What do you mean turning back the clock and making different decisions?
Well, if I could go back in time, I would choose differently with regard to Travis, of course. And when I start thinking along those lines, I think back further, well, maybe I would have never gone to the MGM Grand, or maybe I would have never gotten involved with prepaid legal, or maybe I would have never picked up that DVD and looked at it, or, just different things going back. Like at any point in time, I could have made a different decision, and we'd all be in different places today.
You say that you had some anxiety about moving. See that sentence there?
Yes.
On March 2nd, 2008, what was your anxiety about moving?
Well, I was a little concerned about separating from Travis, not because, well, I knew we needed space apart, but I was just worried that it wouldn't be a smooth separation, and I was concerned about sort of leaving him to his own vices, so to speak.
What do you mean by vices?
Just letting him, he's free to do what he wants, but I guess I was worried about, I felt at this point in time that I was kind of starting to urge him to pick up the phone and call somebody for help, but he wasn't really budging on that. He wasn't doing it. So I was worried that if I just left town that he would never do it, but I didn't want to push him, but I wanted him to do it. So, but it's his life, at the same time. So it was hard. It was a difficult decision. I knew that by leaving, I don't want to say checking up on him, but I wouldn't be able to, I wanted him to make progress with that, in that regard, with his issues, and I wanted to make sure that he went down that path so that he wouldn't go down an even worse path, things that he didn't want to do, ultimately.
Is part of what you're saying with not wanting to say it that you weren't going to be available for him to have sex with?
Objection, characterization in not wanting to say it. She can say whatever she can say what she wants.
Stay disgraced.
Part of your anxiety was that you wouldn't be available for Mr. Alexander to have sex with?
Objection made.
Overruled.
That involved that, yes.
You say you will need to remember to breathe deeply and flow. What do you mean there?
Well, I felt I was making the right decision by moving back, even if it was difficult, and I just needed to remember that. That's what I meant by that.
Okay. Now, Ms. Arias, I want to ask you a couple things before we move past the writings, the text messages, the journals, what have you. There were a couple things that came up in these things on your cross-examination. One of them was the fact that you used the term, you referenced Mr. Alexander as hottie biscotti, and you also used that same term referencing Ryan Burns. Could you explain perhaps your use of that term to us?
Yes. When Juan said pet name, I was thinking T-Dog. That's why I answered yes. It wasn't a pet name that I gave him, but it's one I adopted that he had prior to meeting him. So Hottie Biscotti is actually something that developed when I worked at Ventana Inn and Spa. I worked with a guy named Scott, and he and Daryl and I and everyone there, we were all friends, and we called him Scotty, and we also served espresso, and with the espresso were biscottis. So one day we figured out that it rhymed, so we started saying Scotty and biscotti, and it went with Hottie, and it just went on and on with all these little things that rhymed with that. So Hottie Biscotti stuck, and it's just a name that I would throw out. I've called my brothers that, I've called Daryl that, I've called a lot of people that. So it's not special to me, it's just a saying.
Okay. So it wasn't something you reserved for men that you had some sort of romantic interest in, is that fair to say?
Ask and answer.
Overruled.
That's correct.
You also mentioned talking about Travis and this nickname, T-Dog. That was Travis's nickname?
Yes.
Okay. And if you could speak up, please.
Sorry. Yes, that was his nickname.
Okay. Was that the way your answer, that wasn't a nickname you gave him, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You don't know if there was any particular reference or what that meant, if at all, if it had any meaning?
There were different ideas thrown out, but I really don't know the specific meaning behind that nickname.
But when you refer to him in that way, was it in an endearing manner?
It was, yes.
Okay. Now, we also heard during your cross-examination about Travis's grandmother and how you had sent some roses to her after his death. Do you recall talking about that with Mr. Martinez?
Yes. No, they were irises.
Irises, I'm sorry.
Yes.
And why, my question to you is why you chose his grandmother to send these flowers to?
She's the only member of his family that I'd ever met. And her information, her phone number was given out to a lot of people to contact her, and I felt like by not doing anything or reaching out that would have been even worse than I felt really awful, and I felt like by not doing anything it would have been worse than sending flowers.
Well, let me back up to my question. Did you have knowledge of how important Travis's grandmother was to him?
Yes.
And did you learn that through Travis?
Yes.
And from your testimony, we heard is that you had met her. Well, let me ask you this. How many times had you met Travis's grandmother?
I want to say 3 times, but I went to the house 4.
You say you went to the house 4. Was there an occasion when you went to the house and she wasn't there? Or describe what you mean you didn't meet her that occasion.
There was one occasion after I moved out to Arizona. I believe it was in the fall, 2007.
That should be out of scope of cross-examination.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Please go back to the jury room. We will call you back in approximately 5 minutes. Please remember the admonition.
Please stand for the jury.
The record will show the jury has left the courtroom. You may be seated. Ms. Arias, you may step down and speak with your attorneys. We are in recess for 5 minutes. Ms. Arias, please take the stand.
Please stand for the jury.
Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Mr. Nerman, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just briefly, when we left off, you knew prior to June 4th that Travis's grandmother was very, very important to him. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Before we talk about the trip you took on June 2nd of 2008, you had told, or it had been raised during cross-examination about the violent incidents, both between you and Mr. Alexander, but also just Mr. Alexander himself. You recall recounting for us the incident when he was banging his head against the wall in his
Yes.
home.
Yes.
Okay. You also made mention of the fact that Mr. Alexander had hit your car. You recall saying that in cross-examination?
Yes.
Okay. Could you explain to us the events and circumstances surrounding Mr. Alexander hitting your car?
Yes. It was in, I think it was in May 2007, and we had spent 2 days at Disneyland, and we were driving to the Getty Center in Los Angeles because it was on the list. And from Anaheim to Los Angeles, distance-wise, it's not very far, but it took us a few hours to get there because there was gridlock, 5 or 6 lanes of traffic. We were barely moving, and he was driving my car. And he has zero tolerance for traffic jams. So he got very angry and began to swear and started banging the steering wheel with his fist and hitting the inside of the door, just screaming at other drivers who were oblivious to him, but he was screaming at them and just angry. I mean, it was like he was straining at the leash, but it was a seatbelt, like he couldn't restrain himself. That's what it was.
Did that incident scare you?
I can't say that I felt too scared, but I was really shocked because that was the angriest I'd ever seen him up to that point.
And remind us again, when did that occur?
I believe it was in May 2007.
Okay. We heard about this incident where he was banging his head, and we heard about the incident related to the car. Were there any other instances of violence that you witnessed that weren't against you?
I can't think of any specifically.
Okay. When we talk about violence against you, you told us earlier that he had sex with you or began having penile vaginal intercourse with you when you were asleep. Remember telling us that yesterday?
Yes.
And I believe you characterized that for us yesterday as a mistake. Is that right? You thought it could have been a mistake?
Yes.
When he grabbed your arm and bent you over the desk on June 4th, 2008, and had sex with you, did you view that as a mistake?
No.
How did you view that?
It was just, by then we were engaging in all kinds of activities without any boundaries, and so it was just something he wanted to do and something I was fine with. Like I said, it was a way for him to relieve his anger.
It was a way for what?
For him to relieve his anger.
You were fine with it because it was an alternative to violence?
Objection meeting.
Is that what you're telling us?
Sustained.
Are you telling us that this was an alternative to anger?
Yes, to it escalating.
Okay. Escalating to violence?
Objection meeting.
Overruled. Let me answer.
Possibly, but anything that's, he already threw this CD, so I didn't want it to get any worse.
Okay. In late May of 2008, you were asked about a robbery that occurred at your grandparents' home. Do you recall being asked about that?
Yes.
Okay. And you're aware that a handgun was one of the items stolen from your grandparents' house, right?
I became aware of that, yes.
And you really ultimately became aware of that in late May of 2008 after the robbery, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. At that point in time, would you have had, late May of 2008, if you wanted access to other guns, would you have had access to other guns?
Yes.
How so?
Well, short of buying one, Matt had guns, Daryl had a gun, my father had guns, and Matt had unregistered guns at the time, which is a big no-no in California. You're supposed to register your handguns. So he had some of those, and my dad had more guns than I was aware of at that time, but I knew of 2 9mm that he had, one which had a silencer that he kept by his chair in his office for when he's hooked up to his dialysis machine, he keeps one of those because he's in a vulnerable position. And also he keeps one in his bedroom. I believe it was in, there's shelving right next to the bed. It was either in that cabinet or under the mattress or something like that. So he had those. I don't believe either of those were registered either. So by not registering those, I believe they're less traceable.
Objection, lack of foundation, she knows.
Okay. Several guns at your disposal if you wish them to be. Is that right?
That's right. I don't know that I could have gotten a hold of Daryl's gun, but I knew where it was.
We also talked about your choice to rent a car in Redding, California, as opposed to Wairika, correct?
Yes.
Okay. As it relates to Wairika, one of the things that was queried of you is the idea that it was a small town and people would know your business if you rented a car there. Do you remember that line of questioning?
Yes, I do.
Okay. How long prior to your moving back in April of 2008, how long had you been away from Wairika?
Besides going back occasionally for visits, 10 years.
Then referencing May of 2008, did you know a lot of people in that town in May of 2008? Besides your family?
I didn't recognize anyone. I thought I would see more people that I knew because I lived there, but I actually didn't see almost any of my friends there anymore.
Okay. Now, referencing the same time period, May of, or June, early June, excuse me, of 2008, you owned an automobile, right? This Infiniti that we've talked about?
Yes.
Okay. And being in Wairika, you had family members there as well who had vehicles. Is that accurate?
Yes.
You could have borrowed a car from your parents?
Yes, my parents have lots of cars.
Could have borrowed a car from your grandparents?
Probably.
Maybe your sister?
I don't think she had a car at that time.
Brother?
Which brother?
Carl?
Possibly. I'm trying to remember how many vehicles he had at that time. He had more than one for his house.
Okay. So you could have perhaps traded a vehicle for yours for a few days if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, I could have.
Okay. There were also people in this town, mainly your family, that could have rented a car for you in Wairika if you needed their assistance in doing that for whatever reason. Would that be accurate?
Objection made.
Sustained.
To your belief, would the other people, other family members, have rented a car for you in Wairika if you so desired?
Yes, maybe even a couple of friends.
Okay. But as you told us on direct and on cross, you chose Reading because of the price you were going to pay for the rental car, right?
No, I actually chose Reading because it's the only place that would come up on Priceline or Expedia or whatever I was using. It was the closest place in the direction I was headed that kept coming up when I entered Wairika's zip code.
Okay, in the direction that you were heading, meaning the next question that was raised is this idea that you were heading south through California, correct? That was your itinerary?
Yes.
Okay. So, Reading, California, where is that in conjunction with your first stop, which was the Monterey area?
Probably 6 hours, around there.
Okay. My question to you is it directly in the middle? Is it right off the freeway? Did you have to divert yourself
To go to Monterey?
to go to Reading?
Oh, no, it's right on Interstate 5. Reading is, just like Wairika.
Okay. So stopping and getting in the car at Reading just meant pulling off the freeway and stopping at the airport. Is that what you're telling us?
Objection made.
Well, my brother lived right off the freeway. The airport wasn't too far from his house.
And it was on your way
Yes.
to Monterey. Okay. Now this trip in the Monterey area, I know you talked about many a different town, Seaside, Santa Cruz, that sort of area. But what I want to do is I'm going to use the term Monterey area just for simplicity, okay?
Okay.
When you were there at the Monterey area, as it relates, going back to this issue of cars, did Daryl have a car?
Yes, he has a truck.
Okay. And did Matt have a car back at that time?
Yes, Matt always had a few vehicles.
Would those have been cars that you believe that you could have borrowed from either one of these individuals if you wanted to?
Probably not Daryl because it was his only form of transportation, but Matt, certainly.
And Matt being the guy that was brought up on cross-examination, that would never betray you, is that right?
Yes.
After the time you spent in Monterey, we heard about some time you spent in Salinas. Is that right? Did I say that town right?
That's right.
And Salinas is the city that you got your nails done. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And was this also the city you went to the Starbucks and had this issue with your license plates?
No.
Okay. Where was that? What city was that?
Pasadena.
Okay. Drawing your attention then to this incident with the license plates, do you recall whether it occurred before or after you purchased gas at this AM/PM ARCO station?
I don't recall. It was all around the same time, and I think Starbucks was near Arco. I don't remember if I went there first and then got gas or vice versa.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the gas situation. You had spoken about a gas can you had purchased on June 3rd, exhibit 237.008. Do you recall seeing that last week?
Yes.
Okay. And where was that purchased?
At Walmart in Salinas.
Okay. You said that you said that you returned that. Did you return that right away? Was that before or after you got your nails done?
I think it was before.
And you purchased it before or returned it?
I purchased it. Starbucks is in the same parking lot. I think I went there and then I returned it after that.
Okay, I'm a little confused because you had just told us that the Starbucks you went to was in Pasadena.
That's a different Starbucks. I also got Starbucks in Salinas as well.
Okay, all right. So you purchased this gas can and you decide, well, why do you originally decide to purchase a third gas can? You had two. Why three?
Well, I was thinking about, again, getting cheap gas out of state, and then after I got it, I thought, it doesn't really make sense for the math, and there's not a lot of room in my trunk. So it didn't make as much sense as my idea originally, just to fill up on gas and that kind of thing.
So you returned that gas can the same day?
Yes, right after Starbucks. I think that was before I went to get my nails done.
Before you went where?
To get my nails done,
Okay,
I think.
all right. And you didn't get any sort of receipt from that Walmart regarding the return? That's what you told us, correct?
No, I think they just handed me cash or something. I might have gotten a receipt. I don't remember.
Okay. Now the gas cans you borrowed from Mr. Brewer. You didn't measure them to ensure their accuracy, that they were actually 5-gallon cans? Would that
No.
be fair to say?
That would be fair to say.
Now, staying on the issue of gas, you were shown 3 different receipts from your time at the ARCO station. Now, showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 237.001. Do you recall seeing that?
Yes.
And that was, do you recall now if you paid at the pump or paid inside as it relates to that particular transaction?
Well, I don't recall from memory, but that looks like it was a pay at the pump receipt.
Okay. Drawing your attention to Exhibit 237012. This is a receipt. If we look at the addresses, this appears to be a receipt from the same location, has the same facility number on there, but the receipt is different. Can you see that?
Yes.
In terms of its structure. And I know you don't work for ARCO, but do you recall the difference here? Do you think you paid, I see a clerk number was pointed out, 2525. Clerk number, do you believe you paid inside, or do you believe that you paid at the pump on that one?
That would probably be inside, because I also think that's the only way you can prepay
Okay.
for a certain amount.
And as it relates to these exhibits here, you prepaid $40 at 9.59 gallons. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you said you prepaid that amount. Do you recall, did that go in the car as it relates to the $40? Did that go into the car, or did that go into gas cans?
Well, I don't recall specifically. I'm pretty sure, though, that I filled up my car and then the gas, or I really don't recall specifically.
Okay. As it relates to Exhibit 237.013, we can see another receipt that mirrors the format of 237012. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Same clerk number and same prepayment. You prepaid, it looks like, as to the exhibit ending in 013, you prepaid $20. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, question was raised mathematically to you as to where that gas could have gone. Looking at these two receipts, the prepayment receipts, we see 9.54 gallons, correct?
Yes.
And barely here, it appears we see 2.774 gallons, right?
Yes.
Okay. Assuming that the gas cans you had were 5-gallon cans, those cans would have been pretty full had you filled, put this $40 in the gas cans. Right? Been darn close to full.
Yeah, assuming they were 5 gallons, yeah,
Okay.
each.
So this 277 couldn't have gone in that second gas can or any more in the gas cans, could it have?
No.
As it relates to these two receipts, since they are of similar format as we've spoken about, do you believe, to your memory, that these receipts, these two receipts we see here, were going into the same item?
I don't think so. Well, unless it was the car, certainly not the gas cans. Well, unless they were more than 5 gallon capacity.
Okay. As it relates to the car, when you were at this gas station and prepaying for gas, did you know exactly, I'm going to need blank amount of gallons of gas to fill up my tank?
No, I didn't know that.
Did you leave that Arco station with a full tank of gas in your car?
I believe I did, yes.
As it relates to the gas cans, $10 gallons worth, do you remember when you filled up the gas cans, did you fill those both up to the very top of the can?
No, I was actually worried about doing that because I didn't want to have an overflow of highly flammable substance on the outside of the container or on my hands or anything.
So the gas cans, to your recollection, you did not fill all the way up. Is that accurate?
I would say that's accurate. I think I just picked it up to see if it felt full.
Okay. Judge?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will take the noon recess at this time. Please remember the admonition. We will see you at 1:25. You are excused.
Please stand for the jury.
Record will show the jury has left the courtroom. Ms. Arias, you may step down. Counsel, anything before lunch?
No, Your Honor, thank you.